Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm talking about the series premiere of Notorious, as well as the season premiere of The Blacklist. Starting off with Notorious, which, once again, it's something that literally I only found out about because of a YouTube ad, just because I randomly happened to, I saw it multiple times, but it's just like, I never heard a word or saw a commercial for this until earlier this week on YouTube ads. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it got me decided. I was like, okay, I'm going to check out the show, see what it's about, so checked it out, and I really like it. It's a very interesting show. I saw a 30-second ad, and I wasn't really sure what to make of the show. I had an idea of what it was about, but I didn't expect, the particular roles everyone has. For instance, I thought, Julia and Jake both work for, the news station, but it turns out Jake's a lawyer, and only Julia works as the head of, this news station. She's the one that basically, what I like her job is, because basically her job is to basically take the news and basically create it, kind of be the first one, twisting and turning certain things to kind of get the first word about something breaking, essentially. That's why their station is on the top, the cable station is at the top. It's very interesting because it's a very shady way of going about things. It's not, there's a lot of I'm sure the law frowns upon a lot of the stuff they do. I mean, because obviously a lot of her information she gets from other sources. One of her sources in this episode was a cop. So I was that's kind of gray area, giving information to someone like that you shouldn't be giving information to, especially about an ongoing case. And then also her and Jake's relationship of how later on in the episode she's kind of blackmailing him because basically his brother and someone from his firm, his brother and the lady from his firm basically were taking drugs out of the dude Oscar's car that was stashed, and basically Julia's assistant Ryan took the picture of it. She basically used that as blackmail to get something off of Jake, which was was to talk to Sarah. So it's interesting. They have this whole rule of not lying to each other, but they will screw each other over. But it's kind of some twisted love-hate kind of relationship that they have. Yeah, we can kind of screw each other over, manipulate and stuff like that. But as long as we don't lie to each other, as long as the backstabbing isn't too deep or something like that, I don't know. I mean, this is the first episode, so we really haven't seen to what extent certain things aren't, what the gray areas are for certain things. Because when she found out, it's oh, Jake, you lied to me about this whole pill thing. You told her she's about to come on my show and everything. It's and then she realized, oh, you didn't know about, you were kind of caught up in the lie too. So, I mean, it's very interesting. That's just me talking about themselves. I mean, really quickly, it's really cool. For one, J. August Richards plays Jake's brother. Then we have Julia, played by the lovely Piper Perabo. I can't believe I'm spacing her name. I'm pretty sure, yeah, Piper Perabo. I don't know the actor who plays Jake's name. I do know him from Graceland, which seeing him, I was oh, that's so cool. And then I was that reminds me, I have to go back and watch Graceland. I do know that it's finished now. I mean, obviously, him being a part of the show means it's finished. I only saw the first season. I just kept missing the second and third season. So, I mean, they're both on Netflix, so, but it just reminded me, I was I'm going to have to go back, rewatch the first season, and then watch the rest of the series. I know I'm, so be focusing on Notorious. Anyway, obviously, I like the twists and turns in this episode. First, you have that dude, Oscar, basically holding himself up in his house after the whole hit and run, and the boy ended up dying. Obviously, at that time, he hadn't died. He was just in critical condition at the hospital. But then it's kind of the fact is Jake told him to hold up in his house. It's oh, it makes you think oh, Oscar did that himself, but it's Jake told him to do that, and he's on a show, and then he's making the entire thing was a play. Julia had him up there and make it seem oh, he got blindsided, but they set everything up because they help each other. They kind of have that type of relationship. He presents something to her, and then it's yo, you I set it up and you knock it down, basically, kind of, in a metaphorical sense, comparing it to volleyball, essentially. And, it was just kind of, and they pretend they had a problem because the moment Ryan walked in, they were oh, tell me and everything. But the moment he walked in, they went back and said, and if you do that to me again, I'm going to screw you over type of thing. So it was very interesting. I was you guys are very like, I mean, hence the name of the show Notorious, but it's like y'all are some very shady, manipulative people, which I like it because obviously, what that's what I like about it is because obviously it's taking something that is kind of real, obviously putting it in a fictional setting, but the fact of the matter is that you can only go by what the news presents to you, so they can easily twist things around to shift the narrative, and that's kind of what her I don't know if she's her secretary, but like, she works there too. Her name's Megan. She was basically like, oh yeah, Julia creates the news, like, creates what people want to see. Like, it's like, it's so interesting to me because that is such a real life thing. But, now you get to see it in the show, like, kind of like, there is some realism behind it. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying be all like, complete conspiracy theory about it, but it is kind of it does put things in a real life perspective for you of like, it shows you so how easily people can shift a perspective on things, kind of shift the narrative. So that's what I find most fascinating about the show, and I'm really interested to see what kind of things they shift later on in the episode, the series. I mean, first of all, we have so much deceit going on. Ended up finding out it's like, oh yeah, the person that was actually riding in the car was actually Sarah, Oscar's wife, because everything was pointed at Oscar because it's like, oh, Oscar's car and whatnot. But then, what kind of quickly going back, focusing on Jake for a second, the fact is that he brought that his Oscar's partner Levi and kind of set him up to basically paint him as kind of a possible person who was driving the car when the kid got hit, just to alleviate some of the pressure away from Oscar. It's just kind of like, kind of bring up reasonable doubt essentially. So it's, like I said, manipulative, and you kind of like it. But I mean, what I also liked is the fact is that the whole case is very complicated because it's like, oh yeah, Jake and Sarah have history. Like, he used to be in love with her many, many, many years ago. And then there's that whole scene about she's like, oh, just come in and have wine with her. I was like, oh, come on, Jake, don't. And he's having wine with her. They're laughing. I'm like, oh, Jake. And then like she's like, it was getting to that moment. He's kind of like, no, I gotta go. And she's holding on to him and she's about to kiss him, but he's like, no. I was like, there you go, Jake. And then they go through it. I was like, oh, Jake. I mean, granted, to be fair, it's, when you come across old love like that, it's really easy for the flames to get reignited. So I was just like, I just know this is going to get things complicated, especially because, like, we have Oscar calling him and, like, Jake's getting up and he's checking the phone. He's like, crap, while he's laying right next to Sarah in the bed. And it's just kind of like, don't. Because that's, this is the best example of conflict of interest. That's why basically his brother... Bradley decided, he was saying like, no, let me take this case because you're too attached to this case, because it's basically like, you're defending your ex-lover's current husband. So it's kind of like, once again, conflict of interest. But I mean, sadly, we ended up finding out that, first of all, yes, she was driving the car. Jake was like, what happened? And she's like, oh no, I took pills. I didn't know what I was doing. And like I brought up earlier, like the whole conversation between Jake and Julia, and it came out, it's like, oh, she was actually lying because she didn't reveal that she never got those pills before. Like, her first time was getting them like the day after the accident, and it was not like she was refilling her prescription. I was about to say prescription, and it was but that was the first time she was ever getting those meds. So the moment Jake found out, he's like, you know what? Nail her to the wall. I don't care. Like, she screwed me over. But then it turns out she's dead, and then it's just like things get even more complicated, because you also find out after she died that the fact is that she was actually going to run because she had a fake passport made for her. And then there was the whole situation with Jake. So it's like he's heartbroken because he's like, because it's conflicted, because it's like she lied to him, but at the same time it's because he also has feelings for him. Those, like I said, those feelings got rekindled. Obviously they slept together and everything. It just brought all that old spark back. So having to deal with how he feels about her plus her betrayal, but now she's dead, and it's just, complicated feelings. And now he also finds out she had secrets, because the fact of the matter is she was going to leave, and just like, but she was in so much trouble. Why didn't she tell me? I could have helped her. Why didn't she feel the need to tell me? And we saw at the end of the episode, Julia got some pictures of, basically it showed her husband Oscar having an affair, and then it has pictures of her with bruises on her face, and then it showed a picture of her and Jake together. So it's like, wait, what? like, she didn't say anything to Jake. She just kind of locked it in her drawer, and that was kind of the end of the episode, which I was surprised. For one, it's like, I mean, I'm sure it happens, but it's just like, to me, it's like, to me, pilot episodes usually are kind of like, oh, well, the first episodes are usually kind of like, okay, the mystery's cut and dry. Like, there obviously there's going to be, it's just kind of like, usually the problem's kind of resolved, and but it seems like it's going to be a problem that continues on. I don't know whether it's something that's like, going to be directly dealt with in the next episode. I feel like considering Julia and Jake's relationship, that might be the case, or whether it's going to be something that's like, it takes a little, like, it's working in the background while the stories play out. It always, like, every episode, a little bit more of it comes up, because the fact is she didn't tell Jake. Now I'm wondering, is it because she's suspicious of Jake? That the fact of the matter is that was, she didn't want him to, because she's like, oh, it's this person trying to say that was Jake that, well, I was about to throw out that possibility, but now I'm thinking about, I was like, no, you're being stupid. You're thinking about it the wrong way. What I should be thinking is like, she doesn't want to tell Jake because Jake might kill Oscar, because he might look at Oscar and be like, oh, Oscar, he abused her, and then obviously he killed her because he found out about us. I mean, granted, that was someone else taking those pictures. Maybe this was like all a long con for Sarah. Maybe she actually had like something else in play, and she was just using both of them, and there's like a third party involved, because it's like, who took those pictures and who sent them to Julia? At first I was kind of thinking like, well, maybe Sarah. I mean, maybe they could have been sent before her death, and it's just like Julia just didn't get to them in time. I don't know. It's just, I'm very interested to see where that goes. It's like, who killed her? I mean, obviously, it's all pointing towards Oscar, because it's like obviously, as we can see, he was an abusive husband, but at the same time, like, he was also having an affair too. So, but that's it. Because I was thinking initially it was him, because I was like, oh, obviously he found out about Jake and her. But it's like, if he was having an affair of his own, would he really even care she's having one? So I don't know. Like I said, maybe like she had a con of her own, and it's like she set the whole Bruce thing up because she wanted. Maybe she has a partner, and the whole thing was like a scam to kind of, get Oscar for all his money or something like that, frame him for something. And then, maybe that's what the whole, like, why she was driving. I mean, obviously she was driving to get her fake ID, but maybe, like I said, that was all part of it. Like, maybe the reason why the kid got hit in that hit and run was because she did it on purpose, because she wanted to frame Oscar, but things didn't work out that way. And just, I don't know, maybe her partner's someone to kill. There's so much complexity to it than that. And I'm very interested to see where it goes. Also, I'm completely skipping over, like, Julia's love life. It was kind of like, oh, we got introduced to it, and it is immediately over before the episode is even, like, halfway through, because we ended up finding out her significant other, who's rising to the ranks. Forgot what his position actually is, but she ends up finding out, it's like, oh, he's hooking up with escorts. That it's like, oh, he did it in the past, because she ended up finding out because, like, the lady Megan, like I said, I think that might be her, like, I don't think it's her assistant, because Ryan is her assistant, who, interestingly enough, is her boss's son. So that's kind of weird. It is interesting to see that he is willing to try and work. I thought something bad was going to happen because he, like, screwed over Jake, essentially, because he took that picture of Jake and that associate from their firm. I mean, not Jake, Bradley and that associate from their firm, like, taking those drugs. So I was thinking, like, oh, and the fact is he took that picture, I was like, and he's going to show it to Julia, and she's going to be pissed at him. But it's like, no, she took advantage of that to kind of twist Jake's arm. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, the fact that she was like, no, I'm going to take that and do that. I was like, oh, like, he actually got the thumbs up for, like, doing that. I was like, oh, I thought you were in deep crap for doing that, kind of acting on your own. It's like, I thought she would have been pissed, like, oh, you got to delete that picture. He works with us from time to time. But at the end of the day, like, what comes, like, the TV thing comes first. Everything else comes secondary. It's like, what's best for the programming is what comes first. After everything else, like I said, secondary. But getting back to it, finding out, his Megan was basically like, I was an escort back in the day. I mean, obviously we find that out, but Julia already knew him. But like, I didn't realize, just like, I didn't realize until I bumped into him, and maybe at the same time he realized it too, but he was just kind of like, maybe she wouldn't say anything, or maybe because it was like 5 years ago or something, like, it didn't register to him. But nonetheless, she was like, yeah, we were actually together. So it's kind of like, okay. At the yes, did it with escorts. Okay, at least that was 5 years ago. But then she was like, no, I talked to one of my friends from that business, and it turns out he's done it more recently. And it's just like, oh God, Eric, you douchebag. Wasn't that his name? Yep, Eric. And then she confronts him, and the first words out his mouth is, "So, are you going to tell anyone?" And I love her response. She's like, "Wait, that's what you say? That is the first thing that come out of your mouth?" Like, it's like, you would expect, like, oh, like, at least something like, "I'm sorry. Let me explain. It's not what you think," type of thing. You got this all wrong. Make up some excuses. But the moment she had him by the balls, he was just like, "Yep." It just like, "Who are you? What are you going to do? Are you going to tell anyone?" It's just like, it kind of showed her where his priorities were. He, like I said, wasn't even like, "I'm sorry." He actually never actually even apologized to her. Not to think about it. That sucks. And she's basically like, "You know what? I'm not going to say anything right now. I want you, I'm going to forget about you. Forget that I ever cared about you. Forget that you ever existed, but you will never forget me, because I'm going to hold on to this information. And when you get in a position, where you might be running for senator or something like that, I want you to always think in the back of your mind, could this be the moment that she breaks the news about the fact is that I hook up with escorts and stuff like that." So it's just kind of like, man, you picked the wrong lady, screwed over. It makes you wonder, did he really, really know what she does? I mean, her job is kind of cut and dry, but I mean, there's a shady side to her job. It's like I said, one of the fascinating aspects of the show. Just that in itself, it's just very interesting. I was just blown away by just the manipulation, and I'm loving it, and I'm very eager to see where everything goes. Like, next episode, I'm definitely going to be tuning in. So, and now moving on to the season premiere of The Blacklist. A very intense season premiere where we have Reddington trying to track down Agnes and Liz. And I like one of the guys that Tom ended up taking down. I mean, obviously we saw from like the kind of the flashback of what happened. Obviously the guy got shot when the person was trying to aim for Tom, I guess, but ended up shooting that guy. Nevertheless, the guy got away, but he went to go patch himself up. By the time Reddington and them caught up to him, it's like, oh, he's already dead. So Reddington gets a knife, slices his head off, and then basically goes parading around like, okay, do you know who this guy is? Do you know who he works for? I'm trying to get to Kirk. And it was just kind of like, wow. Like, and then when he's having that conversation with all those cops, and one of them kind of threatens, he's like, okay, I'll take the money, and basically you walk away. And then he was just like, huh. And then because he basically said you can split the money 5 ways, and then shooting the guy, okay, 4 ways, and then everyone started getting a little jumpy. Took everyone out until that one guy was like, he's like, okay, I'll give you a name, and he's like, your lucky day, you get the money all to yourself. And I really like the confrontation between him and Kirk, because it's like, it's very interesting when you see where Kirk stands, because he brought up the comparison that basically is like, okay, there was an affair between your mom and Reddington, and basically, his words said that, through his words, he said that Liz's mom broke off the affair, but because Reddington could never let it go, he kind of took her. I mean, because even Kirk himself said he always had suspicions that Liz was always his, but he's like, no, I got proof that you're not his, you're mine. Which I thought the whole thing was, because remember Reddington told her that, I mean, granted, like, Reddington's lied about a lot of stuff, but the fact is that didn't he say that she shot and killed her dad? I mean, I guess she shot him, but maybe, I don't know, because I remember that being a thing, because she vividly remembered shooting him, at least somebody, and Reddington was like, oh yeah, you shot your dad, so I don't know, that didn't come up. So not unless Liz is kind of chalking that up to like, oh, more of Reddington's lies or something. Maybe I remember. Maybe it's like she's thinking like maybe him talking to me maybe misremember that or something. But nonetheless, he's like, basically because Reddington couldn't let go, he took you, and I've been trying to track you down ever since. And it kind of makes sense. Like, that's why he cherishes Liz so much, because, some people, in the beginning, it makes you think the relationship was kind of like, oh, he was in love with her or something like that, from like a father perspective, because he loved her mom. So it's kind of hard to say whether, because it does seem like Kirk's not telling her everything either, but the difference between him and Reddington is he's talking at all. Reddington kept so many secrets. That's kind of the reason why things kind of ended up the way they did, but I'll get to that in a second. But the fact is that Kirk is like, I did everything to get you back, because Liz is like, well, what about all you've done? Like, the fact that you went to my wedding, shot up to places, like, I did whatever it took to get you back. And now that I'm thinking about that for a second, I forgot. Like, I'm sure we're going to see him pop up this season. Is Solomon, and that just clicked in my head because the last time we saw him, Tom had shot him, but then when the police showed up, there was just a pool, there was some blood on the floor. He wasn't there anymore, so obviously he got away. So now that I was just because I was thinking about it, because him shooting up the wedding and everything like that, I was like, oh yeah, so that means he might pop up this season. But nevertheless, getting back to it, it's like the fact is, I did all that so that you could get away from Reddington. You did the same thing, faking your own death. So kind of bringing the fact is that they're not so different, and it kind of, I guess when at the end of like it kind of. Elizabeth kind of had a very interesting look on her face. I guess she never really thought about the difference, like the fact is of how similar they are. Like, yeah, she has her reasons for doing what she did, but at the same time, it's like it coincides with the reasons why he did what he did for very similar reasons. And I guess it kind of made her kind of question a little bit as to what she did. I mean, there's still a part of her that is like, all I want is a normal life. It's like, because she knows she can't get that with Reddington. She knows she can't get that with him either, even if he is her father. Like, this world, he's too wrapped up in all this craziness for her to ever have a normal life, especially with him. So, but it does make you wonder, like, what is the truth? Because maybe when, not if, but when they get Elizabeth back, maybe he'll finally tell her the truth. Because it came down to Kate, because she even tried to get Dembe on her side. She's like, I was doing what was best for Elizabeth. Dembe's like, I'm not on your side. And she sat down with Reddington because she basically was like, you're giving me the cold shoulder this entire time. He's not really listening to her. He's ignoring her because, I mean, part of me is surprised he doesn't outright kill her, but she is someone very important and close to him. So he's always considered her a strong ally, but this is like the biggest like betrayal he's ever felt. So I guess I'm sure there's a part of him that does understand because she did do it for Elizabeth's sake. She was doing what she thought was best for Elizabeth. And she was like, I'm sorry for doing this. Like, I'm sorry I did that. Basically, that it hurt you. Not really sorry for what she did because she's like, she justifies what she did because it's like, I did what was best for Elizabeth. You've always wanted to protect her, and that's what I did. I protected her from you. You basically, like, you've changed. Like, the only way things are going to be better is if you change Reddington. You have to let her go because he's always kept such a vice grip on her, not letting anything go, not letting her go. I mean, the whole point is he came into her life, back, after all this time, turning himself in just to get back into her life. And it's like, you have to let her go because him entering her life is what brought all this craziness to her. I mean, to be fair, you can't really say that because there's a lot that says like, well, she was kind of mixed up in this world, whether she realized it or not. Because let's not forget, Tom was kind of mixed up in all this. Originally, he was sitting there by Reddington to keep an eye on her, but at the same time, Berlin ended up approaching him as well. So nonetheless, all I'm saying is, even if Reddington hadn't, I mean, I feel like if he had kept a safe distance, maybe, but I don't know. Like, it seemed like even if he kept a safe distance, like, obviously he had an indirect connection to her through Tom, but like I said, Berlin got to Tom, so it's kind of like she kind of would have been wrapped up in all this. But it's like if Reddington had never sent Tom, then you don't know. I mean, because at the end of it all, like, it's like Kirk might have found her anyway. I mean, really, maybe not, because the only reason why he found her is because of what went down at the end of season 2, her killing that dude. Basically, beginning of season 3, her and Reddington being the most wanted people in the world. Like, that put her on the map. That's what Reddington brought up. It's like, what the whole Cabal thing did. They made the mistake of using her real name, bringing her real identity to light, and that allowed Kirk to, track her down. I mean, it's something like, because I talked about this to a certain extent, about like, Liz still being alive and everything. But I never once thought, like, it never came, because I didn't even think about talking about it, because it never crossed my mind. It's like, how would the team feel about the fact is knowing that she's alive? And it's like very mixed emotions. There's part of them that's like happy, and at the same time, very upset. Harold kind of said it the best. Like, he's never felt like so much like happiness, but at the same time, kind of like hurt at the same time. Like, he took it hard, especially Haran, because let's not forget Haran got choked up about the whole thing at her funeral and saying words. It's just all that pain she put them through, because it makes you wonder, like, did Liz ever think about what she's doing? It's like, yeah, you want to get away from Reddington, we understand that, but the fact of the matter is, you doing this meant you were trying to get away from us too, because you can't get away from Reddington without having to get away from the FBI. Like, I'm sure in their eyes, they were like, you could have told us, we could have helped you. That's what this whole thing was about. Like, this team, we're more like, less like a team and more like a family. Because that's the thing, though. She's always trying to start her own family, be with Tom, their baby, and protect them. But at the same time, she is forgetting about the FBI because they are her other family. They've been there for her. They mourned for her, all of them. And then you have, Wrestler is kind of upset about it, but at the same time, he's like, you know what? Liz is in trouble. We need to go help her. And Harold kind of agrees, and Haran kind of agrees. But then, like, Samara's like, no. She's like, no, 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 no. Screw Liz. She lied to us. Like, all the pain and stuff she put us through, she made us think that she was dead. And it's like, yes, I understand why she did it, but I just can't forgive her. She's like, because in her exact words, it's like, Liz put herself in this situation. Yes, she was trying to get away from Reddington, but she destroyed the trust between them. Because how I'm interpreting is, from being who she is, we don't really see Samara having many friends, so I'm sure there's very few people in life, in her entire life, that she's ever really gotten close to, and Liz being one of those few people, and the fact is being betrayed by one of the few people she trusts, I think that just kind of destroyed, like, there's still that side of her that is caring, because even her mom is like, if you don't help Liz and Agnes and something happens to him, I know you'll never be able to forgive yourself. And you see her kind of struggling with it because she has conflicting feelings. I'm very interested to see what will happen. Like I said, not if, but when Liz comes back and it's like that conversation happens. Like I said, because she's the most vocal about being like, because she was even like, okay, send Wrestler, he has to go by himself. I can't because my feelings are conflicted. Wrestler's like, this is about saving her life. She's like, yes, but still, I can't forgive her. Maybe someday, but not right now. In her defense, what I'm thinking is she feels like if she had went, her feelings for being betrayed by Liz would kind of interfere with her doing her best to help her, and it wouldn't help anyone. I guess in her mind, she'd feel like she'd get everyone killed because she'd be so distracted. Like, she wouldn't be able to put her emotions and feelings aside from this. So like I said, I feel like it's just because it's like being betrayed by the few people you trust. So, and after checking my notes really quickly, I wanted to talk about some other things that kind of popped up. Is we had Kurt kind of revealing the fact that the reason why everything's happening so fast and why it seems like this might have been expedited a little bit is because it seems that he's dying of a blood disease or something, so he's trying to get in as much time as possible. Like, it makes you wonder, like, what does he really think will happen? Like, taking Liz, like, he feels like this is the only way he's going to get her back is by taking her away, but at the same time it's kind of like, well, what do you expect to kind of be the end result to this? Like, that you're going to have some like happy little family in the time you have left. It's not going to work like that because she wants nothing to do with that world. Yes, that deals with Reddington, but that also includes you as well. And it also brings up the fact that is like her grandfather never really got to know her. So it's like, oh, she's alive now. So maybe Reddington will use this opportunity to, in fact, like introduce them, because he lost, touch with his daughter partially because of Reddington, and I was like, I lost my grandchild without even ever really getting to know her or my great granddaughter. So I'm very curious about that, because at the same time, I am curious to see what will Reddington do once she's back and safe. It's like, will he actually back away from her? Will he actually tell her everything she wants to know? Because, like I said, at this point, it doesn't seem like Kirk's telling her everything, but like I said, at least he is talking. So how much is true of what he's saying? I don't know. Because at the same time, it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's his perspective. It's his narrative. Kind of tying this back into Notorious just a little bit. But the fact is that it's his narrative, and he can shift it and paint himself in whatever light. That memory of her shooting someone and Reddington making her think it was her dad, like maybe she shot him because he was an abusive person. It's like he's putting on the kind persona, but maybe like he's actually a very, very nasty person. Which I had a thought that I had a pause for, but I'm gonna get to that in a second. Because let's not forget he was going to have Tom killed. Luckily, Tom got the upper hand, and I love what he was saying. He's like, "I'm coming for you. You got my wife and my child. I'm coming for you, and I'm bringing an army." And it's like, whew. What was her name? Susan Hargrave. Okay, I had to flip through my videos really quickly just to find her name, because I was about to say, like, played by Femke Jensen. We ended up finding out that I know I'm probably most likely just butchered her name. I can't talk. I'm sorry. But we found out last season that she was Tom's mom. So obviously that's a story element I like almost completely slipped through my mind. It's like, that's what happens when it's such a long time between me like watching a previous season and watching a new season. Luckily, I've kind of been doing these, so it's easier to kind of like pull back from my knowledge a little bit. I do tend to forget stuff even from week to weeks, but on occasion, I'm lucky enough to be like, okay, the information is there because I've talked about it. I just got to pull for it. And obviously that information was pretty like easy to come across because it's like, oh yeah, her name is literally in one of the video titles. So I know I'm talking stuff that doesn't matter, but the point I'm trying to get across is like, obviously she's going to be a big part this season. Makes you wonder, is she connected to the army that he was talking about? Obviously, maybe he was specifically talking about Reddington and his army, but nonetheless, I'm very curious to see like where she pops up in this season, and will Tom ever find out the truth about the fact this is like, oh, that's his mom. I mean, because Reddington was I forgot once again, it's been a while. I'm trying to remember, like basically he was saying it's a better idea if they don't know. If she doesn't know that Tom is her child, or the fact is that Tom find out that his mom. I think it was definitely that she found out that Tom was his child, but like I don't know. I'm very interested to see where like if that comes out, like what will that be? Will we like, because that way we'd probably have like 3 people kind of going at this whole baby angle, because you have Kirk getting Liz and her child, and you have Susan getting Tom and his child, and then you have Reddington kind of aiming for Liz. It's just kind of like, it's just like a 3-way tug of war, all for like Agnes, but at the same time for Tom or Liz. It's interesting to me. It's just kind of something that was popping up at the back of my head. Also, kind of side note, I didn't even talk about him at all, but this week's Blacklister, his name's Esteban. Very creepy. Just the way he's got people locked up like that, but also like, okay, I was like, oh, you're blind. I was like, interesting, but I was not expecting him to pull his eyes out. Yes, they were fake, but nevertheless, that was just kind of like, oh, put your eyes back in. Put your eyes back in. I don't want to see that. It's just like, I can't hit. Like, I don't know. I think eye stuff kind of gets me the most. Like, it doesn't like make me want to vomit, but it kind of makes me kind of like cringe a little bit. It kind of makes me kind of like something's crawling underneath my skin. It's one of those type of feelings, but nevertheless, I mean, that was just kind of all I want to talk about. I mean, not all, because I also want to bring up the fact is that wrestler kind of sold him out, because basically whole deal obviously with Reddington was like, get him out. I was so sure, I was like, okay, when it's all said and done, I was like, Reddington's just going to shoot him. I was like, no, I mean, honor amongst thieves, I suppose, like honor amongst criminals. But he kind of keeps his word. He's like, basically, you want to stop him? I'm not going to stop you. I got what I needed out of this. You want to be Mr. Follow the rules? You find a way to stop him before he disappears in 12 hours. And he did. Basically, he reported Esteban to the government. The lady, I don't know the actress' names. I don't even know her character's name. I know her as Cutter from American Gothic. Never clicked in my brain because it'd been such a while. I forgot she was on this show too. But nonetheless, she was like, what the hell are you doing? Because basically, now that he'd basically it been brought up that it's like, oh, he's alive, and basically that information was circling around, basically the government couldn't keep him around as kind of like a source. So it's like, basically they want to kind of wipe him out, but wrestler doing this kind of brings him out to the light. He's arrested, so it's not as easy as just wiping him out like that without, prying eyes catching a hold of it. So kind of screwed that up, but wrestler was like, no, because you were about to wipe him out just to cover up what you were doing. I was like, that's not the way to do it. I mean, but the good thing is, because wrestler did this, all those people got set free, because the Cuban government didn't want it to be known. Like, they want to pretend like none of this happened, so they're going to let all the people go just to make it seem like nothing happened. Because wrestler, because initially he wanted to go with Reddington, but Reddington's like, no, you can't go. What are you going to do? Tell them they're under arrest, kind of wave your badge around. It's not going to mean anything. He's like, I'm basically Reddington's like, I'm there to put a bullet in their heads, and I can't have you sitting there trying to play essentially cowboy. Which, to me, I was kind of halfway expecting a response of like, no, if it's about rescuing Keen, I'm willing to do everything. But it's one of those things where it's like, even for people he cares about, he's not willing to break the law, because he's talked about that before. Like, his dad crossed that line, and that's why he's so adamant about not crossing it himself, so he doesn't kind of want to be a reflection of his dad. So no, go back. I'm actually got that backwards. Once again, been a while, but it was a story he told Tom. I think it was because his dad followed the law to the letter, but he got screwed over. And it's like, even when you follow the rules all the way, you still get screwed. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was the latter and not the former that I was saying. I think he was straight and narrow, and he followed the rules, but at the end of it all, it wasn't enough to kind of stop him from getting screwed over. I don't know, like, essentially, I don't know. Like I said, that's what I get for if you do remember that specifically, do let me know, because I do want to get that right. Like, if I got that wrong, which I'm pretty sure I did, but I'm pretty sure it was like the latter, that he does like follow the rules. But if you do know exactly what I'm talking about, do leave a comment or something, because I don't mind being corrected. I like being corrected because it means like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm fine with, because it means I got something wrong, and I like to like be reinformed about something, because I sure as hell am not going to go back and listen. It's like, oh yeah, this is the episode where they talked about that, and I'm talking about it. It's like, because I don't want to listen to myself. So the only other way is for me to go back and rewatch it, but it's like, I got other stuff on my plate, so I can't go back and rewatch that while I'm watching the current season. You know what I mean? It's like, I got the gist and remember large parts of the seasons, but it's like certain things I kind of forget from time to time. So I know I'm very, very forgetful. To anyone that might be new coming across this, I want you to know that going forward, I will forget a lot of stuff. So if you do want to correct me on something, always feel free to. I'm sure it's the internet. People love to correct you. And it's like, I'm fine being corrected, because I do get stuff wrong all the time, because I might confuse it with something else, or I might simply get like small details backwards, or I might misinterpret something wrong way. And I'm fine with being corrected. It's like, okay, the reason I make these is because I do like the conversation. It's a one-way conversation at this point, but I like it to be more than that. I want other people's input about this. I guess maybe I don't make it as apparent as I should, but I do want a conversation, because that's why I want to talk about these TV shows, not just to myself, because I definitely don't do this for my sake, because I don't I hate having to edit these afterwards, which I have to edit them to a certain extent, because I have to take out the points, like, a lot of like the dead space when I'm like checking something. Like, I was like, for instance, like Susan's name, like I had to like pull that back. I kind of got Susan, but I couldn't remember her last name. But one of those things is like, I have to go back and cut out a lot of that time. Granted, it was like 20-30 seconds it took me to find that, but nevertheless, that's 20-30 seconds I'm gonna have to cut out. So you get my point. So I don't like listening to myself. So more so than anything, it's just kind of like, hey, gets a conversation started, and I kind of want it. You know what I mean. I'm rambling on. Nevertheless, very good episode. Cannot wait to see what this season has in store. But until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.